These are the signatures of 272,000 people who want the real NBN, Labor's NBN, not the second-rate NBN that this government is building.
But we're coming to the end of the copper era. We're coming to the technological limit that copper can provide.
Internet speeds in Australia aren't something that we can hang our hat on exactly.
The NBN, the debate that has lasted since it was first conceived in 2007, and to this day, it still continues to have many misconceptions surrounding it. Despite these misconceptions, there has not been enough action to solve them, and that spells disaster for this plan.
Is the NBN actually worth it? Is it worth the money, time and effort some people say it to be? That is something you will have to judge for yourself.
First off, a bit of background about the NBN. If you haven't got a clue what the NBN is, essentially it's a broadband network that is being rolled out across Australia with the hope of improving broadband speed accessibility to a high proportion of Australia.
The more we use the internet, the more our current copper network is struggling to keep up. After all, it was originally designed for phones.
A lot of average Joes and even relatively computer literate people don't actually have a clue about what the internet is even about, or what even makes it up. This is quite worrying, because if people don't know much about it, chances are they won't know much about their benefits either. What is the NBN?
I don't know.
You don't know? Do you know what the NBN is?
No, I don't. I've never heard of it before.
What is the NBN?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, it is the National Broadband Network.
Why just tell me? Still don't know what that is.
Okay. So do you know what benefits it will bring?
Like benefits to like people using it.
I don't know.
Okay.
Do you know different types of technology that would be competing or cooperating with the NBN?
What? So you don't know? Like
No.
different things that might be competing?
I have to do some research.
Okay, so do you know what the NBN is?
National Broadcasting Network thing, I think, and they do fiber optics.
Yeah, okay.
I remember that much.
So can you describe what it is?
They do fiber optics for places like
Okay.
I think.
Cool. So what benefits will it bring?
Faster internet, and I can finally get off my Wi-Fi.
Okay.
I think.
What societal benefits do you think it will bring?
Businesses will have faster internet and will be able to do like work faster. Because I know my dad, he rages at our internet how slow it is.
So your dad, he works from home.
A mix at home and at his place, but mainly at home.
So when he's trying to work from home, does he ever find it frustrating because of the speeds?
Yeah, emails. He had it because my dad usually gets overloaded with work. He has an email like say due at 4, and it's usually sent at like 4 or 5 or something like just because it's slow.
So it's the slower speeds are like
annoying.
Limiting his productivity.
Yeah.
He can't get as much work done just because of the fact it's slow internet.
Yeah. When they're all connected at once, it usually either grinds to a halt or so slow we can't use it.
If you know about the NBN, then you'll find that a lot of these perceptions aren't entirely accurate, and it is obvious that there is a problem with the public perception of the NBN. There is one obvious thing that has been done here, and that is failing the marketing campaign, which was supposed to inform people of the benefits of the NBN, which has clearly done poorly. If you know about the NBN, then you'll find that a lot of these perceptions aren't entirely accurate, and it is obvious that there is a problem with the public perception of the NBN.
When the interview process began, the interviewed participants were almost completely befuddled and confused about what the NBN is and what it competes against. there was very little knowledge of what could actually be done with the technologies, let alone many of the benefits. None of the benefits that could actually affect an average person were really shown. It just looked like a bunch of techno jumble. The techno junk perception is exactly what is wrong with the NBN's marketing, and where it is fundamentally flawed.
Thus bringing us to the biggest point of you watching this. The entire NBN is just a series of super fast pipes. Pipes that are much faster than the current pipes that we have right now.
Hundreds of years ago, when lead wasn't known to be poisonous, people used lead pipes to distribute water, but they didn't know it was poisonous, and when it was discovered how bad lead was for you, they replaced all the pipes. It's a similar story with the NBN. 100 years ago, when the first copper cables were laid, they didn't know that they would be later used for high-speed broadband communications. Copper wires couldn't keep the signals good enough over long distances, and Australia was falling far behind other countries in terms of broadband. So, the Labor government announced fibre to the home to upgrade the aging copper network and make sure that Australia wouldn't be left behind. The NBN isn't just an investment in faster internet, it's an investment in future technologies. Fibre optic cable and copper cable both use pulses to send information, but glass is more pure, so the pulses are more perfect. This is significantly better than copper wire, simply due to the fact that there is less interference.
Imagine you're trying to get a message across on a walkie-talkie through a forest, and you're over a kilometre away from your partner. To actually get the message across, you would need to have to say the message slower than you usually would, so your partner could get the information. And so it takes longer to get the information across. Now imagine if you were in a completely flat field with no obstacles, no trees, no hills, just nothing. And you were trying to get the message over the same distance as in the forest. Because there are less obstacles, you can get less interference, which means you can send the message along faster. Now with copper, you're able to get the problems of it being copper, as in it corrodes, it gets damages by water and rain, which adds further noise. This is the difference between a noisy copper wire and a clean and pure fibre optic glass cable.
We'll take a look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong, on average, has the fastest internet in the world, with an average of 64.52 megabits per second. Megabits per second is the measurement of information that can be sent over in a second. It is very similar to how much of a message you can get over the walkie-talkie. The higher the number, the more information you can send in a second. The reason why Hong Kong has such high internet speeds is because in 2006, Hong Kong rolled out a huge undertaking of a fibre optic network, and it paid off.
Now Australia is a big country, which is why in the original plan there would be 2 satellites and fixed wireless base stations launched over the small minority that couldn't realistically get broadband with fibre all the way to the home. On average, full fibre to the home, which we'll explore later, can provide significantly better speeds than any other method. And what's more, because the fibre optics keeps the signal so clean of noise, it can actually go over quite long distances without losing any significant noticeable quality. But it's not all apples to oranges. There are many different ways you can deploy fibre optics. For example, you can use fibre to the house or fibre to the node, and there is a large difference between the two.
Fibre to the node is having fibre optic cable stop at the node or cabinet at the end of the street, or somewhere near it. This option uses copper over what is called the last mile, which is the space between you and the cabinet on the street. The big problem with this is that you still get all the problems of copper, and gain relatively small increase in speed because of the way Australia's copper network was made. Fibre to the home is pretty much having fibre optic cables go to every single house in every fibre area. This is the more expensive option, but it ensures that there are no issues with copper over the last mile.
You can clearly see that fibre optic cables have a distinct advantage over copper cables. This shows how beneficial the NBN would be from a communications and broadband viewpoint.
Good.
Now we discuss the price, and this is really where the very little people actually know anything. You may think that fibre all the way to the home would be expensive. For the cities, this will be true. But for people in the country areas, this will be drastically cheaper than what it costs to get access to broadband now. And this is for a very unique reason. The NBN is set up so that it doesn't ever actually sell directly to the customer, but to a retail service provider. Each retail service provider gets uniform costs across to the NBN and resells it to you, the consumer, with customer support, features, and all the extras. But every service provider gets exactly the same deal, which means there is just pure competition to get the consumer's money. This type of model leads to drastically more competitive pricing, and what's more, the price completely uniform across all the fibre to the home consumers across Australia. Depending on where you live, you may be receiving the NBN at different times.
The NBN, however, is a huge infrastructure project that will take many years to do, because the fibre has to be placed in so many places, so it's natural that such a big project will take a long time. At the moment, it is restricted to just a few isolated places, but the hope is there will be high-speed broadband access to every Australian.
The constant changes of the NBN are a result of multiple political and business aspects. One of the major viewpoints of that is the business. iiNet is getting 60% of the early sign-up of fibre optic deals, threatening Telstra's monopoly. As a result, Telstra has become somewhat reluctant for the new NBN changes to the communications of Australia. The NBN Co will also receive a large sum of money, as they are currently in charge of the installation of the fibre optics around the entire nation. However, since they are a government business enterprise, it is considered as an extension of the government, and thus any income and expenditures are on the behalf of the Australian government.
There are also many social benefits that the NBN can bring. Home services or businesses run from home, which often depend on the internet to confirm transactions or appointments, so a better network can help small business astronomically.
The success of all IT-related jobs or businesses would also be improved as well. Not only this, due to social media or general internet-related services such as Skype or FaceTime or Facebook, a heightened internet could aid these services, so that people can stay in connection with their friends or family, whether they are 1,000 kilometers away or disabled or unable to visit.
Overall, the NBN is beneficial to Australia as a whole and will bring great change, not only economically and politically, but also socially. The NBN is the future.